Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. As you, the listener, well know, I'm a huge fan of history. Did my graduate work and undergraduate work in history, and love talking to people that are serious about the subject. David Rubenstein, well known. He has a program over at Bloomberg. He's also on PBS, known for his philanthropy, internationally recognized in that space. And we're just delighted to have you on the program, co-executive chair and co-founder of the Carlyle Group. Welcome to the program. Talk a little bit about your background that makes you passionate about history, that led you to write your book, which is really an extraordinary book, The American Story, Conversations with Master Historians. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I grew up in Baltimore. My parents were not college or high school educated. My father worked in the post office. I had to kind of do things on my own if I was going to get ahead in the world. I got scholarships to go to Duke and University of Chicago Law School. I ultimately went to work in the White House for President Carter. We didn't get reelected. I had to go back and practice law. And then I wasn't so great at that, so I ultimately started an investment firm that turned out to be better than my law practice. And ultimately that gave me the ability, because of its success, to go out and become involved in philanthropy. And one of the areas I'm interested in philanthropy is what I call patriotic philanthropy, which is to say to remind people of the history and heritage of our country. So I bought some rare documents like the Magna Carta or the Declaration of Independence and put them on display so Americans can see these rare documents. Or I've been involved in fixing the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, so people will go there and actually learn more about these great individuals. This particular book comes about because I wanted to educate members of Congress a little bit more about history. So 6 years ago, I started an interview program, in effect, at the Library of Congress, where I interview great historians in front of members of Congress only. And I try to educate members of Congress about great Americans and great trends in American history. And it's worked out reasonably well. Members of Congress come, they sit with people from the opposite party, nobody's fighting with each other, and it's a very enjoyable experience for them. And I've taken 16 of those interviews and put them into this book.
Yeah, very good. And you did a great, you must have done this interview many times. You did a great job. There's summing it up. Yeah, it's a great summary.
But I think I just had one of these interviews this week. David Blight, who wrote the great book, won the Pulitzer Prize on Frederick Douglass. But the interviews are designed to say this. You can come inside and see what the members of Congress are learning by reading this book. You can also learn a fair bit about American history and the great people in American history by reading this book. If you really want to read more, read the whole book of the biographies that the authors are talking about. I'm giving people a bit of an appetizer, and it's done in the interview format, so it's relatively easy to read, and you can just kind of take the interview. It's probably easier to read than a textbook.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good read, and considering how it was converted from one source to another in terms of media, it's really well done. So, of the stories, what would you say is the most interesting one, or the one that most resonated with you?
Well, there's many of them. Of course, John Roberts, I interviewed him. He's not a historian, but at the beginning, I thought it would be good to educate members of Congress about the Supreme Court works, and I know him reasonably well from my work at the Smithsonian. So I said to him at the beginning, did you always want to be Chief Justice of the United States? He said, no, I had no interest in that. Did you want to be a judge? No. Did you want to be a lawyer? No. What did you want to be? I wanted to be a historian. I loved American history. His father said there's no money in being a historian, so you'll really never be able to support your family. But he said, I don't care. I'm going to do that. He went to Harvard, majored in history. Came back from spring break, gets off in the airport at Boston, gets in a cab. The cab driver says to him, where do you want to go? Want to go to Harvard? Are you a student there? Yes, I am. What are you majoring in? Majoring in history. The cab driver said, well, when I was a student at Harvard, that's what I majored in also. All of a sudden, John Roberts realized maybe his father was right, and he decided to go to law school.
I love that story. Yeah, well, I have, my work was in history, and I'm a radio talk show host because I wanted to make a living. So I totally get that. Talk about kind of responses. I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Well, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what kind of responses are you getting from members of Congress? What kind of feedback?
Well, to be honest, it's I don't like to talk about it in this way. Members of Congress often say to me, this is the most interesting thing they're doing in Congress is coming to these dinners. So I say, the dinners can't be that good, or the rest of Congress can't be that bad. And the dinners are nice. Members will come. We have a reception. They see they see documents relating to the book. They meet the author. They bring their copies of the books, and they often get them autographed just like anybody else would. They ask questions after my interviews are done. But obviously there are many other things in Congress that are more interesting. But members like it because no press is there, and they can sit with people from the opposite party. They can talk with people from the opposite party, and nobody criticizes them because nobody's really seeing it who's going to write about it. So members of Congress like it, and they're interested in history. Remember, these are people that chose to go into a low-paying profession because they really like government, and they like policy, and they like civics, and like history. So when they get an opportunity to meet a great historian, it's really a terrific opportunity for them, and they love it.
So obviously you're a strategic thinker. It's very obvious from the work I've seen on Bloomberg and your book. What were your objectives? What were you thinking about as you were putting together this series?
Well, I thought, to be realistic about it, the era of good feelings is not going to break out because of a nice dinner that I might host once a month. But I do think that members of Congress, when they can be more civil with each other and not be in a competitive public environment, can actually develop friendships that might lead to legislation being done that is good for the country. And also, who better to learn about the history of our country than the people that are making the laws? So it's important that all people learn about history, but I think nobody should know more about our history than lawmakers. But thinking about this, right now we don't teach history very much to anybody. As you know, as a former student of this, it's a sad situation today. Only 2% of male undergraduates are majoring in history. Only 1% of female undergraduates in college are majoring in history. So you get statistics like this. 3/4 of Americans in a recent survey said, when they asked what are the three branches of government, could not do it. In other words, 75% of Americans could not name the three branches of government. 1/3 of Americans cannot even name one branch of government. 10% of college graduates recently said that Judge Judy is a member of the United States Supreme Court. And 16% of Americans in a recent survey, 16% said that Justice Scalia, who's deceased, is the Chief Justice of the United States. So it turns out that 91% of the people who take the citizenship test who are foreign citizens who want to be naturalized Americans pass, 91%. The same test was given to native-born Americans recently, 41,000 of them, and in all but one state, except for Vermont, in all the other 49 states, a majority of citizens who took the basic citizenship test couldn't pass the citizenship test. So, not a good situation.
Very sobering statistics indeed, and it is. It's very obvious. You not only not know about the three branches, they don't understand the role of checks and balances, because almost all the conflict in politics today is because of these blurred lines around checks and balances that are really clear. Very, very disturbing. Final thoughts. We've got about 40 seconds left before I have to wrap it up. David Rubenstein is my guest today. He is a philanthropist, TV personality in his own right, the author of the book, the editor and author of the book, The American Story, Conversations with Master Historians. Final thoughts as we wrap it up, sir.
I think Americans should learn a little bit more about our history as a way of being a good citizen. If you want to be a good citizen, know about the country's history and how the government works, and therefore I think you can make a better citizen of yourself. And if we have more informed citizens, hopefully we'll have a better government.
Yeah, that's a great note to end on. I want to encourage the reader to check out this book. It's really important, very smart, very well done, very engaging. The American Story, Conversations with Master Historians. David Rubenstein's been my guest. And I want to encourage you to check it out. It's at Amazon and many other locations. I'm Kevin Price. You're listening to the nationally syndicated Price of Business show. It's the show that never ends. It continues 24/7 at priceofbusiness.com. We're always adding new audio, video, articles, and more. Stay tuned for more right after this.